21 masterclasses in new consciousness, new ways of thinking, being and doing for the new you. Pioneering thinkers from countries right around the world. Hello, I'm Shanti and welcome to today's masterclass, one of 21 masterclasses in new consciousness, a new series looking at new ways of thinking, being and doing for the new you. Now, my name is Philippa and I'm going to be with you throughout this series as together we listen to the experiences from pioneering thinkers, people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, as they share with us their ways of developing resilience in these extraordinary times. Now, one of the things that each and every one of us has had to learn to cope with in this time of the coronavirus is change. It's change that has been sprung upon us seemingly overnight as we've been asked to change the way that we live, to stay at home, only going outside for essential things, to not go out to work, to not see friends and family, to not pursue all the hobbies and interests and sports and things that we used to do in our life. And many people are saying that the world has now changed forever, that we won't just go back to business as usual, but that there will somehow be a new normal and we will have to adapt and cope with that change. So what exactly that new normal is going to look like, of course, none of us know, but it's something that we are going to have to live with, possibly, and learn to live with. So that's our topic for today's masterclass, embracing change. Of course, all of our speakers throughout this series have been both students and teachers of the Brahmakumaris World Spiritual University. It's a place which is very much looking at this whole area of new consciousness. The subject that is taught and studied there is Raja Yoga meditation, which is the meditation of the mind. And the activities that the BKs get involved with really cover a vast spectrum of things, right from major international conferences and seminars, training programs, down to working at the grassroots level, working with communities and helping them build resilience to the changing world in which we're all now living. It's an organisation that was founded in India in 1936 through a series of visions and teachings that came through the original founder, Brahma Baba, and their teachings which are felt very much to be geared specifically to this period of time, this time that many people feel is like a transitional phase. So the teachings feel really relevant to today. And the founder decided quite early on that it was important that women were kept at the front, that somehow women had the qualities that were needed for this time of change. And so women have led administratively the organisation since its beginning, making the Brahmakumaris the largest organisation of its kind in the world to be led by women. Well, let me introduce you to one of those women who's joining us on our 21 masterclasses today, and she's someone who is herself no stranger to change. She was born in London to parents who moved from St. Kitts in the Caribbean to the UK when they were both young. And not only did she have to permanently move between the Caribbean culture at home and the Western culture at school, but as a child she also moved house, moved school, going from one area to another, which meant changing friends and in some ways changing herself in order to adapt and fit in and be accepted as one of only 2 or 3 black students who were at her school. After university and qualifying as a teacher, she began a job in Tanzania, and then after 2 years went to Zambia and then Botswana, where she also got a job, and so it carried on, I think moving over 8 times in 10 years. And other countries that she spent time in: Zimbabwe, Mozambique, South Africa, Kenya, visiting Swaziland, Nigeria, Ethiopia. So really moving and learning to adapt to change all the while. Samantha Fraser is now happily settled back in London, where she works as a primary school teacher, and for the past 26 years Sam has been both a student and teacher with the Brahmakumaris. So Sam, great to have you on Masterclasses. You're joining us from your home in London, where you've been in lockdown like the rest of us, not going out to work but staying at home with your housemates. How would you say you've coped with the change that has been thrust upon you by the coronavirus. What changes have you noticed in yourself, would you say?
Hi, Philippa. It's really nice to hear that introduction. And it's amazing when I think about, God, that's quite a lot of change in not a very long space of time. But in terms of the coronavirus and, like you say, being at home for maybe, 6 or 7 weeks now, actually, for me, to be honest, it's been in a way a gift, because it's really given me space to just stop and reflect and look at some of the things I haven't had a chance to look at because I've been busy in action. And so not going to work and not being involved in the Brahma Kumari's work that we do, it's been a chance just to be very still and to look at my journey over the last 26 years. And that, I think, will not come again very quickly. So I've used the time, I feel, quite well just to process what's happened in the last 20 odd years in terms of my own spiritual growth and development.
And could you put your finger on any change that you have made within yourself during this time? Anything that has felt significant to you?
I think for me, what's been significant is really looking at my relation with myself, first of all, and really checking how much have I really put into practice things that I've learned over 26 years. And so I think it's been a chance to really accept where I am personally, a chance for really honest reflection in terms of what I still need to change and what I still need to work on. And I think the space has given me a chance just to explore some of those areas. And so I think the biggest change is just being very honest with myself right now, because no distractions.
When we read your life story, it really does sound like embracing change has almost been, an essential part of your life and how you've lived. You've been forced to learn to change. And of course, all of us change in our life as we, experiment with who we are and learn what makes us happy and adapt in order to fit in. Would you say that you've always managed to keep a strong connection to yourself, no matter which country you've been living in, which culture you've been living in? Or has it taken you a while to reach a place of really knowing who the real you was? How has that been for you?
No, I think I've learned along the way in different places. I don't think it came just like that. I think coming back to London actually has been able to give me space and time to look at and to begin to kind of really become very comfortable with myself. I think when I was out in those different countries, it's so different in a way that you're having to, yes, adjust, but you're just kind of moving all the time and just adapting. So you haven't really got a chance to process. And I think what I'm finding now is just really feeling that the more I'm connected with myself inside and there's that stability, then it's easier. I think when I was traveling and moving around a lot, it was quite challenging in the sense that, I had to get used to different cultures, and I wasn't always so easy. And so I think there were times where it was challenging and it was difficult in the sense that there wasn't that stability. So I think now all of those experiences has enabled me to reach that level of stability. It's still developing, but I think all of that change, I kept doing the same sort of patterns, and then you get to a point you think, well, hold on a minute, it's the same reaction you're going through. So you need to change because you're still reacting in the same way to these situations, no matter what the country is. So what it does, it forces you to look at yourself because it's different country, different people, but yet you're reacting in the same way. So what is it? It can't be that country, then it can't be that particular person. It must be something inside of me. So I think in a way, although all those different countries and staying in those different countries in a way forced me to accept responsibility for my reactions and but also to acknowledge my strengths at the same time. So I think when you're in one country, it's very hard to see yourself because you're in the same culture and people reflect that culture. But when you keep moving around, then you see yourself because everything has changed, but you're not changing in terms of your personality. So I think that was the gift, where you were forced to really look at yourself and say, well, hold on a minute, this keeps happening. Why? And so, yeah.
And of course, when you travel, you realize that, different countries do things in different ways. They have completely different mindsets, different ways of looking at the world. And in a sense, you were possibly prepared quite well for that in your growing up years, as you went from a primary school, which was a mixed race primary school. You were given the cup for being the excellent student, so you were a very bright child, and because of that you went to quite a top academic school where you were one of only very few black students. And so, you know, that challenged your ability to stay connected to yourself and find who you were in relation to this new environment that you were in. How do you think, looking back now, that experience affected you as a child and in your growing up years?
I think, you know, in such an early age, you're really having to adjust quite quickly because the culture is different and you don't really see anybody who, in a way, looks like you or reflects the values or the experiences that I have, very few, in my particular form. And so I think it kind of makes you, in a way, rely on yourself a lot more because you're not seeing the external support. But I think what can happen too is that you also try to fit in. And I think if I look back at age 16 or whatever it was, how you can almost compromise yourself to a certain extent. And in a way, it's almost as if it's not that you hide, but you kind of can lose yourself in that environment because nothing is being acknowledged in terms of my experiences at that time. And so in a way, you compromise yourself to a certain extent. I think I might have done that. I think I did do that, where you just go with the flow, if you like, and you probably don't share things that people don't really understand. And so you keep those inside. So I think there's a part of me, if I look back, that I couldn't really share because I don't really think they would have understood given their backgrounds. And so, of course, that was at school, but coming home, that was my environment. So I think it was almost trying to live, in a way, two different worlds. And yeah, in a way, I think there might have been a lot of time of just compromising and in a way, just denying certain things that I felt were important for me at that time. Absolutely.
So really kind of learning to integrate these different aspects of yourself. And was there quite a journey to get to a place where you felt you could be the same person no matter where you were and no matter what environment you found yourself in? Because that, I think, for many people is something that they strive for, as they feel that with different groups of friends and in workplace placements, they're almost being different people.
Yeah.
And yet the journey to integrate all of those aspects can be quite a hard one.
Yeah, it's true. And
would you say that was how it was for you?
I think so. And I think if I look back, it was perhaps before my 16 years of age, because I think at 16 I was in sixth form college, and of course it was a little bit different and there was more representation. But I think the turning point was when I did sociology, and then I was reading about my own community, and then I felt, yes, this is representing my experience. And so that was interesting how, okay, for the early years, 11 to 15, trying to fit in and all of those things, but getting to a point where finally there are books about the culture that represents where I'm from. And so I think at that point, it was a chance to integrate and say, okay, great. Yes, this is who I am. This is what represents me. And I was able to move forward from there from 16 onwards. So that was a significant change, actually, just that one subject.
I can imagine. And of course you then went to university, which was again very mixed. And then when you arrived in Africa, you know, quite a strange situation, because by then you were already a student with the Brahma Kumaris. So you were a black British woman in Africa, studying Raja Yoga meditation. And at that time, a lot of the Brahma Kumaris were from an Indian background. So then there was another layer of cultural adapting that was needed for you. That's quite a lot for one person to cope with at one point in their life. How well did you manage that?
Well, it was interesting. I think maybe my school years was a preparation for that, but it was challenging in the sense that I didn't speak the language, so neither did I speak Gujarati, nor did I speak Kiswahili at that time. So I think when you don't speak the language, that's a very huge block, because you can't really communicate. I don't think I laughed for like 6 months because nobody understood my humor. You can't translate humor. And so although there was a lot of warmth, a lot of love from the family there, and I was a student at that time of the Brahma Kumaris, I think the biggest thing was not being able to express myself. I could express myself, but I couldn't be understood. And so I felt that distance and that separation because I really couldn't really find a connection on that level because I didn't have the language. There was the language of love, definitely, but there's a time when you just need to express and communicate and share ideas. And I felt I didn't have the opportunity to do that at that time in that context when I first went to Tanzania.
So in some ways, would you say that you felt a bit of the outsider in a lot of these places that you went to because you were from another place?
Well, I don't think I felt an outsider as such. I felt definitely a little bit disconnected because of the language. But I think in terms of the spiritual teachings, we all shared the same concept of spirituality. So I think there was a link there, an underlying link. But the day-to-day chatter and the day-to-day humor, you know, that I was like 24 at the time that I wanted wasn't there. So I wouldn't say I felt like an outsider. I felt very much a part of the family because they were so loving. But in terms of a 24-year-old wanting to banter and have a little bit of a laugh, that couldn't happen because of the language. So do you see what I mean? So in that sense,
totally
quite different.
Yeah. And then, of course, with your meditation study comes the whole subject of seeing the self in another completely new way, which is not as the physical body at all, but as a soul, as a spiritual being, which is the same as every other human soul on the planet. What kind of shift did that bring about in you in terms of changing how you saw yourself?
Yeah, it was interesting because I remember when I was at university or when I was doing my postgraduate course to become a teacher, I'd written a poem before I actually met the Brahma Kumaris, and it was entitled Who Am I? And at that time, I think I was already feeling a sense that there's much more than just this physical identity. So when I heard this aspect of this spiritual identity, and I think what really made an impression was just the aspect of being able to access those qualities. And I think the first one was happiness. And I remember doing a positive thinking course in 93, I think it was. And the person said, never forgot this, we have spent a whole lifetime looking for happiness outside. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's really true. Went home, 11 o'clock at night. I wake up and I'm crying like a baby because I'd spent 23 years of my life looking outside for happiness. Then I realized that actually it's within myself. And I think that for me was the turning point when I then did the meditation course. But just being able to access qualities that I'd been searching for outside of myself for all those years was like a liberation. Even love, being able to connect to the love within myself was huge. And then of course the love for God was an amazing gift, if you like. And so for me, that was it. As soon as I experienced that, I wasn't going to stop. And here I am today, continuing, still on the journey.
And did that change once you had made that connection with that inner being? Did that make a difference to how you related to the external world in terms of, how physically you presented? Once you had made that internal shift, did it manifest in how you were with other people, would you say?
Just thinking back, I think it probably did, because it was such a huge shift that in a way it was more about connecting and looking at the qualities more than the external. So I think that became more important as I began to realize it's not so much about where the person's from or etc., which played a very huge part in my upbringing. It was more about, what am I feeling now from this individual? What am I offering in terms of my feelings? And so I think it was very subtle that change began to happen. So I was able to check my own intentions, my own motives, and being aware that sometimes, many times the motives weren't really selfless, or they were more selfish. So being able to tune into a different level of my own self and relationships, but also picking that up from others. So that was a very important in a way, transformation in terms of how I saw my relationships, and I began to interact with them too, especially with my own self, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there are changes that come about in your day-to-day life. Very often when you kind of commit to a meditation practice of some kind, changes in how you eat, changes in how you live. how did you adjust to the sort of the spiritual lifestyle and the disciplines of a spiritual life, getting up early in the morning for meditation and things like that? How easy did you find those changes?
Well, I think, as a new meditator, I was like a bit of a perfectionist. So I wanted to do it all very perfectly, instantly. So I was a bit like a robot, so all the little disciplines of getting up at 3:30 in the morning, and I was like mad in the sense that I did not miss the alarm clock would go off on the first ring and I'd be up. And so I think the disciplines were easy. And in terms of the food, that happened quite quickly because I felt a physical benefit. But I think actually looking back, there was a lot of immaturity, because I think it's not about just following disciplines, but it's about really understanding them. So there I was doing all the timings and doing all the meditations at the correct time, but not really understanding at that time why, and perhaps why I was doing it and where it could lead me. And I think years on, I began to realize it's something more natural that we do with love. But I think I was in the mode of getting it right, if that makes sense. So these were the disciplines. This is what we had to do. There I was, getting all the different aspects right in a very immature way, I would say, at that time.
I guess if you've been given a cup for being the excellent student, then you want to be the excellent student no matter where you are and what you're studying. And by the sounds of it, you probably got the cup for being an excellent student. But in terms of, the changes that you were making, they were very much driven by yourself. And I think it's very different when people have change forced upon them, like many people are experiencing now with the dramatic changes that they're having to make to their lifestyle. And never mind what's happening with coronavirus, but even before that, we were being asked to make changes to our life in terms of, reducing our carbon footprint, using less plastics, possibly moving to a more plant-based diet. Things which people might intellectually know are right, but they find it hard to make that change because they don't lack the will, but they lack the courage to see it through. What advice would you give to someone who feels the urge to make change but lacks the discipline to really do it?
I think what I would say is really to start with something very small, because I think the main thing is that we have to create almost like a habit of change. And often we look at the very big things and it's very difficult to change those things. And so I would really suggest to start with something that I know I can change. It might be starting exercise. I don't know, something very, very basic. And when I start that and I'm able to maintain that and I'm consistent in that, it almost sets up a habit of, or a belief that I can sustain change. I can make the changes necessary. But I would choose something that you can do in the next hour or so. It might just be something simple like, okay, I'm going to make my bed because I never make it in the morning, whatever it might be. But I'm going to give myself 2 weeks or a period of time to do that just one thing. And then it cultivates this energy of change because I've been able to be successful in one small thing. I think we have this default kind of system where we try to deal with the big things, and that's so hard. And I think the biggest change, of course, is being able to change my own self, and that's a whole life journey. And I think we need extreme patience. I think my focus now is just really focusing on the changes I need to make within my own self in terms of my habits that keep tripping me up or tripping other people up. And I think for me, what I've learned is to be extremely patient and to be very, very kind. And yes, if I get it wrong, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. Let me get up and let me try again. But that's another level. But I think just take something small to start off with and then build from there.
So really baby steps towards change.
Yeah.
And also once you see and experience the benefits, then that gives you the energy and the will to keep going and to maybe make further changes.
Absolutely.
But I don't know about you, but I feel amazed in a way that countries right around the world have been able to implement these changes in their life seemingly overnight. And I think the human capacity to adapt and cope with change is actually phenomenal, and the human spirit is hugely resilient. And one of the things that has come from all of this, I think, is a realization that humanity has got the ability to change. We've proved that we can do it. What do you think we can do to possibly really anchor in some of the more positive changes that people have experienced in their life, like you were sharing, in terms of having had the time to really focus in on yourself and really establish that inner connection? How do we anchor the positives that have come from this experience of change so that it doesn't all just dissipate when things begin to go back to normal?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think it's really about maybe looking at one or two things that we've been able to do in lockdown that's been really, really beneficial. And then looking at how I can continue that even after lockdown completely finishes. It's going to be in phases. And I think often if we don't plan for it, it doesn't happen. Because what happens, things go back to a sort of normal. It's never going to be as it was. But then we find ourselves defaulting back to what we did before. And I think it's very important then to look at what I'm doing now and to perhaps look at two things, if possible, that I can continue realistically when I do have to go back to work. And I think unless I plan for that, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to get back into the rat race of working. It's just validate what I'm doing, because often we do things and we don't often look at the benefit that it's bringing us. And I think if I just sit down and just write down the benefits that I've earned or I've got from doing 2 or 3 new things from lockdown, it's almost convincing me that this is something I need to continue. It's like I need to see it in black and white. And so I would say something like that. Validate what we're doing. Whatever new things I've been doing in lockdown, validate that. A list of benefits that it's given me, black and white. And I think if I've got a list there, it's very hard then not to do it, because I'm convinced that that's something I need to do, like drinking water or eating is something we do because we need to do that. And so in a way, I need to almost convince myself that I need to continue this for my own benefit and the benefit of others as well.
Gandhi had a saying of be the change. When I change, the world changes. This idea that, we can put a lot of energy and focus on changing the external world. Significant changes come when I do change myself. But at the Brahma Kumaris, there's quite a clear sense of the direction of travel for the way humanity is evolving and the changes that we would like collectively to see in the future. And those changes are then brought into the individual, and that's where the alchemy happens. That's where the inner shift happens, that is then reflected in the outer world. How would you describe that vision for the future in terms of the change that you would like to see in the world?
I think it really starts, as you said, really with each one of us. And I think it's really an inner change that has to happen in terms of my own thoughts and my own attitudes. And I think it's about really each one of us taking time and space to really go inside to connect with the qualities that we are. Because unless we do that, then it's very hard to bring about a significant change. And it's about being able to feel what all of us are. I think if we were to ask people, what are you looking for? They may say external things, and you get behind those external things and they'll say 2 things. They'll say peace and happiness. And I think we've spent time looking outside for those things, and yet all of those things have simply triggered the qualities that have already been there. So I think for change to be permanent and significant, it really requires each and every one of us to really go inside and be our own trigger, not to rely on something external to make me feel the way that I've always wanted to feel. And it's a huge thing, because it's something I've been working on just in terms of dependency and looking for external support. And it's such a huge habit, even dependent on a smile, and I've been checking my own self, how much I look for external support, how many expectations I have from people that they should or they should not. And I feel at this time, people are so, in a way, self-absorbed, because they're all going through their own processes, that I can't really expect somebody else to, in a way, even understand me or do it the way that I want it to be done. And I think it's something that we need to begin to check and let go of. That the more I'm expecting from outside, the more I'm going to be disappointed, but to know for sure that whatever I have within myself. And of course, for my own practice personally, it's been the connection with the divine that's being helped me to begin to see the treasures that I have. And again, it's a work in progress. I'm not going to say it just happens like that, but at least begin to see how many external supports I'm trying to take from, because what I'm finding now, and we're seeing it now in lockdown, that all external supports are collapsing. Because what it's doing, I feel it's helping us to, in a way, go inside to find the support that we have inside of us. And unless we have these external challenges, we don't do it. And so I really feel that the more we find that inner strength and inner support, it's not just about myself, but that's going to help so many others. Let's say you've got a family of 5, maybe not everybody will do that, but if I do that in that family, then I'm going to be a support for all 4 of those people. And so it just takes one person in each family, if you like, to make a difference. And I think right now people don't need to hear words so much, but they need to be able to feel something. So if they feel that strength and that support of love from an individual that they know, that's really going to bring hope, but it's also going to bring stability for them too.
I really get what you're saying about, when you have expectations of the world around you and people around you, that, you're likely going to be disappointed, because everything is in a process of change. People are changing, situations are changing. What was true yesterday is no longer true today. It's a world of constant change. And yet you're saying to really look within to find that place of stability. I want to push you a little bit harder on that, because for many people, when they look within and start observing themselves, they also find a whole state of flux in terms of their thought processes. And, there's possibly not very much stability when they do look inside. So where do you find that inner stability that you're talking about? What is that understanding that can take you to a place where within you there is stability? How do you find that?
Yeah, I think you need some kind of method or a teaching to be able to do that. I think if we just tell people to look inside, it can be quite scary, and most people don't want to do that because the mind is in upheaval. And I think for me, in terms of, and I'm really going to relate it to my own experience with Raj Yoga and the Brahma Kumaris that I've learned in the last 26 years. And I think for me, it's been the teachings or the understanding of just not just looking at my thoughts, but being able to change them internally. And I think just this awareness that you brought up earlier, Philippa, of a spiritual identity, seeing myself as a soul, and even just that awareness brings a change, brings a different feeling inside. And so it does require some kind of learning to begin to look inside and in a way bypass the upheaval and all the noise that's going on inside to find 5 seconds of peace or stability. Because the 5 seconds that I experience, if I just play with this awareness that I am a soul, and the soul is, by definition, what I've wanted to experience my whole life, which is peace and happiness, true peace and happiness, then those 5 seconds will challenge my belief that it's not possible to be peaceful. So what I feel we need to do is just create opportunities where I can experience stability through going inside. It may not be, we're not talking about hours or even minutes. Initially, we're talking about seconds. And what those seconds do, as I said earlier, is that it challenges my belief that it's not possible. Because for those 5 seconds, I felt something differently. Now, I could just ignore it and just carry on with what I do, but I probably won't, because it'll be niggling inside of me that, what was that? I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't talk to my friend. I didn't go out. I didn't do my hair, whatever. But I felt a sense of silence. And it was on my own. And I think because we're all searching for that, consciously or subconsciously, it will speak to us, that inner voice that we hear, even if it's just for a short space of time, like a few seconds. So yes, we do need a method, but I also need to give myself the space to sit and listen in. and even connect to that part of me just for a few moments. For me, that's very important.
So it's really like the analogy of the still point at the center of the storm, that no matter how much movement there is, there will always be a still point.
Absolutely.
And if you're identifying with the hurricane that's moving through, or the cyclone, or whatever it is, you're going to get spun around like you're on the fast cycle of a washing machine.
Yeah.
But within that, there will be a place of stillness. And if you can learn to find that, then you've really cracked something quite profound, because you can stay calm amidst the storm. And that is quite a skill.
Yeah. You know, it takes years, Philippa, you also know it takes consistent practice, but it's just being able to see it once. And then I keep tuning back into that still place. And I think we need to give ourselves the space to see it just once. And that gives me almost the thirst to keep going there.
You've talked about the importance of the connection with the divine in terms of what you've experienced on your journey. And I suppose that is another still point, because the divine is unchanging in this world of change. How does that interplay with the experience of yourself as a still point, and then connecting to a sense of the divine also as a still point? What is that exchange and flow of energy like for you?
I think for me, it's kind of developed over the years, but right now it's really about being able to recharge our own batteries. And I think connecting to the still point, as you put it quite nicely, which is the divine, gives me an opportunity to recharge and re-energize my own self. Because where do we do that? There's no human being that I feel that can really re-energize me in the same way. And so when I connect with the divine, it's a chance, yes, on the one hand to re-energize, but in a way to see myself, and to see myself as I am without all the faults, but to see myself in a way, if this makes sense, as he, she, or it sees me. And it's just, when I see that, then it gives me an opportunity to accept that vision too. I think one of the things that is quite challenging is to let go of the visions that we all hold of ourselves, which can often be quite limiting, and it can often be quite critical. So when I connect to the divine, it's like the experience, the feeling of that shows me in a way my own inner beauty. And then my journey, or my effort then, is to accept it, because still it's a question of, going through your own kind of self-image and lack of self-respect. But the more I tune into that, the more I am convinced, if you like, that that is my true state. And that true state is just a state of love and peace and joy. And in a way, it's like connecting to the divine as an ocean of love, or the ocean of peace, enables me to see my capacity also to be loving and peaceful. And we need a capacity, because at these times it's a challenge, isn't it, to keep stable and to be kind of positive. And so in a way, it's almost like tapping into this unlimited energy of goodness, if you like. And that really allows me to see my own self as good. And I think if we can see that amidst the mistakes that we make and hold on to that, that's a huge, okay, the mistake was made. That was there. I'm not denying it. It was there. But I hold on to the true vision of myself, which is what the divine shows me in meditation. So I think that's how I would use it.
For many people, though, change brings up fear. And experience has taught many people, myself possibly included, that you want to hold on to things as they are, because when things have changed in the past, they've often changed for the worse. And you begin to descend into a state of chaos. So you cling on to and try and preserve where you're at, because you fear what will happen if you move away from that. And yet this experience of the coronavirus lockdown has forced change. It's been the impetus for change. Yeah. So there's already movement for change. So in many ways you could say that this is actually a perfect time for people to keep pushing on that envelope of change and to not have fear around what might happen, because things have changed for the worse in the past. And hearing you talk about change has really felt very inspiring in terms of when you let go, what you can then find is something greater than you could have ever possibly imagined. That there is almost a leap involved in trusting that change can bring something amazing, which is what you've experienced in your life.
Yeah. And I think that you really tapped on that the key word, and it's about trust. And I think it's because, there is fear around change because we don't really trust ourselves, actually. We don't trust ourselves to make the right decision or to make that change work. And I think, in a way, for me personally, it's been a journey of building my own inner trust. But I think it happens when I see that the change works, in a sense. And then I have like many examples of that. And then in a way, again, it's almost challenging my doubt because it worked in a sense, And so I think it is about trusting myself. And even I think realistically for myself, when I've moved around, I can't tell you that there was no fear. There was always fear. I was like shaking in my boots half the time, but I kind of carried on because I felt that there was benefit in something. I felt there was either benefit for me or there was benefit for others. So whether I was shaking or whatever it was, and I was having 1,000 thoughts in my mind, something told me that I needed to move in that direction. And I almost feel that we all have a story. We're all on a journey. And I think for all of us, we do want to get to a destination of peace or stability. It's not always conscious. And I think in a way, subconsciously, things move us in a direction that we have, in a way, we're compelled to go down, because in a way we know that it's going to get me closer to what I want. If that makes sense. I don't think it's conscious. I think it happens subconsciously. That's why all the fear and I'm panicking, but I'm still doing it, but with all the panic. And I really feel that the soul knows, if you like, the spirit, the soul knows what it wants, and the fear will be there, but in a way it's going to move in that direction. And either the situation will force us like lockdown, which is great, but at the same time, I can also develop my own inner kind of resource to work with time, if you like, to move me in the direction that I need to move in. So yeah, I really do feel that, the fear will always be there, I think. There'll always be a bit of fear, maybe less than before, but something's moving us all in the direction that we need to go. And maybe I think we'll get to a point where we know it and there is no fear. But for me, there are things that still there's a bit of a, the heart races, and there's, I'm feeling a little bit, agitated or not comfortable, but I still do it because I know that there's benefit for me or for others.
And I guess whether we like it or not, change is happening in the world around us.
Yeah.
And it's happening at a pace. We need to keep up with the change. And rather than reacting to things as they're happening, the motivation from what you're saying is to become part of that change and to lead that change by making positive changes in your own life, which has been very inspiring to hear how you've done that in your life. It would be lovely, Sam, if you could just lead us in a meditation just before we have to close, and just take us into some experience of finding that stillness that you talked about that is within each one of us. So no matter how much change is happening, how much fear that we're feeling about that change, that we can always come back to that place of stillness within ourselves. If you could just take us with your thoughts into an experience, that would be great.
Okay. All right. So just sit comfortably, and we're just going to spend a few moments just with ourselves right now, and just connecting to ourselves in a very unique and special way. And so just make sure the body's relaxed and you're sitting comfortably. You may just want to pay attention to the shoulders, because that's often where the tightness and the tension is. So just kind of drop the shoulders and just relax completely. And I'm going to ask you just to journey inside yourself. And the way that we do that is just to, first of all, become the observer of your own thoughts. And so just watch your thoughts as they come and as they go. Don't judge them, don't analyze them. Just be the observer. And as the observer, you will notice that your thoughts are separate from yourself. And so what that means is that we can create any thought we like. And it's our positive and powerful thoughts that can take us into a place of stillness and stability. And so right now on the screen of my mind, I create one thought. And the thought is that I am peace, I am calm. And with that thought, it takes me to a place of silence, of stillness, so that no matter what happens externally, I'm able to find a place within me that's still and that's quiet. In this place of silence, in this place of peace, I'm connected to myself as I really am. And in this peace, there's a feeling of security, a feeling of stability. And I realize that the world is in a state of constant change. And the only thing that can bring stability is when I connect within myself in this place of stillness and silence. And the effort is to really come from this space of stillness, so that no matter what happens outside, I remain connected, still, silent, stable. And what it brings up is this awareness that there is a source, a higher power, if you like, that's always been there as a support. You may call it the divine, supreme power. But if I just create an awareness of an eternal connection with this ocean of love or ocean of peace, again, that adds to the security and the stability that I feel right now. Wherever I am, whoever I'm with, there's this eternal connection with the divine. And the divine is radiating constant peace, constant love, constant light, not just to me, but to each and every individual. And so for the next few moments, let me spend time just bathing in this light of love, this light of peace, which brings a feeling of stability, security. Just peace, just love, just light from the ocean, from the source of all virtues and all powers. And so, keeping this experience with you and this feeling, just very gently come back to the present moment. Become aware of where your hands are. Feel your back against the chair, your feet on the floor. If your eyes are closed, you can gently open them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that beautiful experience, really touching into that place of peace and love, which is at the heart of our being, that is constantly there.
Thank you, Philippa. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been really great to hear your journey with change, and I wish you all the best with the changes that will be coming down the track as we start to go back to some sort of a life lived outside of the house. And of course, with you as a teacher, there's going to be many challenges ahead, but you will navigate them with grace, I'm sure, as you have done all the other changes that you have been talking about today. So thank you for being with us on Masterclasses, and we look forward to connecting with you again at some point in the future.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you for your wonderful questions. It's been great.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Sam.
Take care.
And thank you to you as well for listening from wherever you are. I hope it's been a really insightful journey into our experience of change and how we can challenge some of our assumptions of who we are and how we live and where we go next from here. Until next time on Masterclasses, keep well, keep safe, Om Shanti, and goodbye. 21 masterclasses in new consciousness, new ways of thinking, being and doing for the new you. Pioneering thinkers from countries right around the world.
Awakening to a new way of living.